In this video, we're going to take a look at how to decide which books are worth sending in to get graded to flip for profit and how to choose which books are 9.8 candidates. Stay tuned.
Bry's Comics.
Welcome to Bry's Comics. If you're new here, you're just in time for my latest giveaway. This is the last video for your chance to be entered to win this awesome set of books. We have Sleigh Bells #1, the one-shot from Bad Idea Comics. We have Something is Killing the Children #1, the 8th print, epic cover on that one. Wind #1, some awesome James Tynion goodness from Boom Studios, and Amazing Spider-Man #1, the first cameo appearance of Silk. This also has the first appearance of Lash because it reprints, it's like a bonus issue of Inhuman #1. All you have to do to be entered to win that is subscribe to the channel, comment on this video, and leave a like on this video. Don't forget to do that subscribe part because I've had several people win recently. They won the draw, but they weren't subscribed to the channel. Also, for another chance to win, head on over to bryscomics.com and sign up for the newsletter. Each and every month that you stay subscribed to the newsletter, you're entered to win a free slab. This month is Something is Killing the Children #1, local comic shop day, full foil edition, and a CGC 9.8. So this video is part of a series I'm doing that basically paints the whole picture for how to make money flipping comics and have this hobby fund itself. I'll be compiling them all into a playlist when they're done, and I just recently dropped a video that details the different methods I use to flip comics. I'll put a link down in the description if you haven't seen that one already. One of those methods, and the most lucrative method, is to buy comics raw and submit them to CGC yourself and then sell the slabs. So this video is diving deeper into that method on how to decide which books to send in to get graded and which ones are 9.8 candidates. It's important to note that the info in this video is just about flipping comics. If you're submitting books for the PC because you love the books, then none of this applies. And there are a lot of different approaches to getting comics graded. Some sellers slab basically everything that comes out, send everything in to get graded in a CGC 9.8, and then send them to eBay auctions and cross their fingers and hope they get a hot book. Please do not do this. It's not good for anyone. It's not good for you because you're barely making any money. In a lot of cases, you lose money. It's not good for CGC because it backlogs them. And it's not good for the collector because people are tempted to buy a book because it's just a $20 CGC 9.8, but then they get stuck holding hot trash that nobody wants to buy. So it really isn't good for anyone to do this method. Please don't consider just sending everything in. I've had people comment before and say, hey, wait, basically, if you grade anything, it's worth more money, and so everything's worth grading, right? No, not everything is worth grading. Personally, I think that that method of flipping comics is lazy and selfish, and it's just not a sustainable business model. So the criteria I look at for deciding if a book is worth getting graded is looking at the sales data at the time of sending it in, and considering all the variables that might affect the price by the time you get that book back from CGC, because right now, the turn time for modern books is around 5 to 7 months. And so let's hop into the computer and look at some examples of this. All right, so here we are on eBay and we're looking at Thor #6 second print. This is the variant second printing by Nick Klein, and it's the gauntlet worn by who would appear to be Thanos is similar to the gauntlet worn by Thane, the son of Thanos. It's definitely Thanos here, but the gauntlet appears to be the same as the one that Thane wears. And there was an increase in copies sold due to a Twitter question to Donnie Cates asking if this image was important, to which Cates responded that it is. And that is all that it took to spike this book. So this is before that spike. This person sold a signature series custom label CGC 9.8 for $61. They probably lost money on this when you factor in the cost to get this book signed, the cost of the raw book, the shipping back and forth, all of that, and the custom label. They probably lost money. This one here for $25, they definitely lost money because of the grading fees, about $25 when you factor in shipping, and then there's the fees from eBay and everything else. So this is worst case scenario for flipping. You never want to put something up at auction with a starting bid of $24.99 when that would be a loss for you. Just start the bid at your break-even point, or better yet, don't do auctions at all. I would highly, especially for a book that's ice cold like this. Because look, right here, 2 days later, the same book sold for $39.99. You probably could have made $5, or at the very least broken even. So just list this as buy it now and be patient. So as you can see, $39.99 is going price. This is not what you want. You do not want to submit a book. If you have a book like this, and you see prices like this, it's a red flag. Just stay away from it. Don't submit it. It would not be a good choice. And then we look here, the 1 in 50 sold for 100, still around $50. And at one point here, we're going to get to the announcement. Now the price jumped up to about 80, now 90 and 120. So this is definitely after announcement, because we're back up to $120. And here the 1 in 50 signed sold for $6.99, best offer accepted, $100, $120, $700 best offer accepted, $120, $200 and $750. This is the peak of the FOMO, where everyone is just clamoring to get this book. $750. And then check it out, only a couple weeks later, the exact same book, $158. So this just goes to show you, I mean, somebody lost $600 on that if they bought it for $750 and sold it for $158. So this is an example of a hot flash. This is just a flash in the pan, and something you probably want to avoid. So that's the sold prices of the CGCs. Now let's look at the unsold listings and see what's available on the market right now. So here's one, sketch and remark for $8.99. There's no way he's going to sell that. $650, $900. See, people are still reaching for those FOMO numbers, but I don't believe that they are going to get them. $220. Now here's one listed for $119. So this person is reasonable, but it's sitting here. It's not sold. And so there's enough copies available here that aren't selling. If you go back to sold and look, when was the last one that sold? It was 2 days ago, but it was for $158. This one 2 days ago was for $96. So the prices are definitely coming back down. And now you have to think, okay, well, if I submit this book now and I get it back in worst case scenario 7 months from CGC, but even if you had to have it pressed first from somebody else, I mean, you're looking at like 7-8 months. What is the price going to be if it's starting to soften now, like a week after the uptick in price? What's it going to be like 7 months from now? It could be cold as ice. So in my opinion, this is not a book that's worth submitting at this point. You can make the argument that this spec could actually pay off, and Donny Cates delivers on whatever he was talking about this being an important scene, but you don't know anything about the scene, anything about how that's going to play out. There's just zero information to suggest that this is going to stay important and hold value. And that's why I would steer away from it, because there are plenty of opportunities in this hobby and in this market where there is solid confirmation and evidence that it will be a key. So why take a gamble on this one? This one is just a shot in the dark, a roll of the dice, no information, just taking a chance. And in my opinion, why not put your money behind things that actually do have a chance and that have a lot more evidence? So I would stay away from this one. On the flip side, if we look at Infamous Iron Man #1, so here we have some raw copies, and you can see that raw copies selling for $45, $35, 35 best offer accepted, 35. So about 35 for a raw copy, and for a CGC 9.8, 245. Almost 1,000 for the 1 in 25, 1,000 for the 1 in 25. 250, 250, 250 for the cover A 9.8, and this is before the hype. This was back in May, and there was more of a hype. And if you go and look at the available copies for a CGC 9.8, there's one available, and it's $500 for a regular cover A. Do not pay $500 for this book. In fact, I actually have pre-sales for it over on my website for $175 for a CGC 9.8. But as you can see, there are no other 9.8s available. So what this tells you is that the market is not saturated with it. This isn't something that people were speccing on and holding a bunch of copies like the Thor #6, where they just had a ton of these copies graded. So I do think that this is an excellent opportunity to send them in raw and have a good ROI when they come back. So in this example, we take a look at what's available and what it's selling for now. And I would say, gosh, now I could probably sell it for $300. definitely 250. We have evidence of it selling for 250, but we could probably sell it realistically right now for 300, 350. And then where's it going to be in 7 months when it comes back? Well, in 7 months when it comes back, there will likely be a bunch of copies, because we can see here there are many raw copies being sold. Okay, so that means that people are going to get these graded and they're going to come back from CGC. So about 6-7 months from now, there are going to be a lot more copies of a CGC 9.8. Now, here's the caveat to that is, one, this book has a fantastic cover. It's an awesome cover and it will hold value because of that. And two, the spec behind it. First appearance of Tony Stark AI. Did that whole video about the potential for him to show up in the MCU. So 6 or 7 months from now, we could have him in the MCU. This book could be way higher than it is now. So it checks all the boxes that this one is definitely a good choice to send in to get graded. One rule of thumb that I like to use is to only submit books that are selling for $100 or more at the time, and that will likely stay the same or go up in value because of speculation. There are a ton of books that are worth $50 right now in a CGC 9.8 that will be worth way more in 7 months, but it's really hard to predict that. So if you use the $100 benchmark, it gives you a little bit more cushion so you're not stuck holding a bunch of $30 to $50 9.8s. At that price point, it really isn't worth all the trouble of sending them in to be graded. All right, guys, I wanted to share a couple more thoughts on value. And the rule of thumb that I use for values when trying to decide what to submit to CGC is a double up after all total costs have been accounted for. So what I mean by total costs is the cost of the raw book, the cost of shipping the raw book to you, the cost of pressing the book if you're going to press it, the cost of shipping it to CGC, the CGC fees, shipping it back from CGC, the selling fees, and then the income tax that you're likely going to have to pay on the profits. All of that comes into account for the total cost that you have invested in the book. So on the income tax part, you know, I'm not going to do a video on income taxes for hobbies because I'm not an expert. Okay, I have a tax person that does my taxes for me, but I'm pretty sure the way it works is if you have income coming in, you need to pay income tax. Let's look at the Thor number 6 second print example for numbers. Okay, and so if we look at today's number, I say, okay, great, I can sell a 9.8 for about 90 bucks today. Great. So if I only paid 10 bucks for the book, 25 bucks to have it graded. Let's say 10 bucks for the book because maybe you got it for 5, but shipping to you, all said and done, you paid 10 bucks, $25 to get it graded. So now you're into the book $35. And then let's just say you can sell it for $100 today. All right. So $100 minus 15% for your selling fees. Now you're down to $85, which is a $50 profit. Now you're going to have to pay 20% income tax on your $50 profit, which is $10. So your end of the day take home is $40. Well, if you're only into the book $35 and you can get 40 out of it on top of that, that's more than a double up. That would be a great opportunity. However, with this book, and this is kind of how you have to think when you're crunching these numbers, I believe that you will have a hard time selling this book for $50 when it comes back. And if you change those numbers to $50 for the sale price, you're going to take a loss. The reason I think that is I'm sure hundreds and hundreds of copies have been submitted since that little tweet that Donnie Kate did. So in 6 months, the book is likely to be cold as ice, and there's likely to be hundreds of more copies available. So if it was selling for $100 right after the peak FOMO, what's it going to be when there's no more talk about this? It's just cold as ice and there's more copies. I think you're going to be hard pressed to sell it for 50. So that's why, in my opinion, this is just not a good pick. And it's a really good example of how you need to be thinking when you're submitting a book. On the flip side, let's look at Infamous Iron Man #1. So if we go with the $35 sale price, now here's an important point. Let's say you bought 10 copies, because if you buy just one, especially for Infamous Iron Man 1, it's an all black front cover. It's really hard to get in high grade. So if you buy just one copy from someone on eBay who's read that copy, it is likely not a 9.8. And these numbers only work for 9.8s with these modern books with this example. So let's say you bought 10 copies at $35, which is like probably the minimum that I would do for this book is to buy 10, because I know that a large percentage of them aren't going to be 9.8 candidates. So I would buy 10 copies at $35 a piece. That would come to $350. And let's say only 6 of them are 9.8 candidates. That's fine. We'll send in the 6, $25 total grading fees for CGC. With shipping both ways, that comes to $150. So that means I'm now into the books $500. Now let's say I submit them to CGC and 1 is rejected and only 5 come back. A very likely scenario. So you're going to have an $8 rejection fee. And then at the end of the day, you have 5 CGC 9.8s. Let's say you sold them for $300. Conservatively, that's $1,500. But you minus your 15% selling fees, that's down to $1,275. With 508 invested into the books, that's a profit of $767. And so you have to pay 20% income tax on that. That's $153. So you more than doubled up. That's a great example of a good one to send in. So Infamous Iron Man #1, I think, is a no-brainer. That's why I said it's a slam dunk spec. So those are just 2 examples of the way to be thinking, and to give yourself those cushions. Be super honest with yourself about all the fees and all the costs. eBay is going to trick you. eBay is designed to make you think that you're making way more money than you are because it's good for them. You end up spending more, you end up wanting to sell more. When you log on to eBay and you go to your seller's page, it's going to say 90-day total for all of your sales, and it's very misleading because those are just your total sales numbers. They don't factor in any of the fees, all right? And so it's a really useless number that they show you, 90-day sales, and you go, wow, look, honey, you might even show your wife and say, look, I made $15,000 selling comics, but really, at the end of the day, when you factor in all your fees, it's much less than that. So be honest with yourself, keep really good track, get yourself a spreadsheet, and write down every single fee that went into you selling that book so that you have a realistic idea of what it's costing you. I think if these people that are flipping these books for like $30, $40 actually did that, they would say, oh, wait a minute, why am I wasting all of my time to take a $5 loss? You know, they might be looking at that eBay seller number for the past 90 days and say, hey, I'm doing okay. When you look at the real numbers, you're really not. So be honest with yourself, keep track of every single fee, and you'll start to get smarter about your flipping. Another tip on this note is don't submit a bunch of copies of something because you really love the story or art. This is a great reason to submit them for the PC, but not for flipping. Just because you hope it gets popular or made into a show does not make it a wise flipping choice. It's easy to get caught up in this because we love comics, and sometimes a particular story will really move us, but then after 5 issues, the series is done and nobody wants a graded copy, and you're stuck holding 10 9.8s and are forced to sell them at a loss or hold them for years and just hope that they get hot. It's not a good sustainable business model. I've learned this the hard way. In the beginning, I submitted a lot of stuff that I loved, and turns out not everyone else did, and I got stuck holding for too long and barely broke even. My point is this: there are so many opportunities to pick books that meet the $100 cutoff with spec potential, so stick with those. It's just a more sustainable method. So now that we discussed how to decide which books are worth getting graded to flip, let's look at how to choose a 9.8. And for that, we're going to take a look at a stack of books that I've already decided to send into CGC. And you're going to see that about 95% of the books that I submit need a press first. Unfortunately, I haven't used a presser in a long time because I do all my own pressings, so I can't really recommend anyone with confidence, but I would say to avoid CCS, CGC's pressing service, at all costs, because their turn time is like 7 months, which means, and that's just for the pressing, so when you add in the grading time, you're looking at over a year before you get your books back. There are many reasonably priced pressers with more like a 2-week turn time. Just ask your buddies who they're happy with and go with them. Also, I'm not going to do a pressing video at this time because I hope to offer pressing services in the future. But I will say that everything I learned about pressing, I pieced together from YouTube videos and trial and error. So all of the information is already available to you right there to learn how to press your own book. So let's jump into this other clip and take a look at some real life examples. All right, so here we go. We have a stack of books, and we're just going to kind of go through these and see which ones are 9/8 and which ones need a press. So first off, I just look at the overall waviness. This one is good. This type of waviness is definitely passable in a 9.8. And then you just kind of look in the light and see if you can find any defects. So right off the bat, I see right there is a bend. So this definitely needs a press. I also notice right here is a manufacturing defect. And it looks like something that happened in printing, like coming off of the printer. That's where it grabbed it or something. And I have noticed this throughout the entire print run for these books. And so because of that fact, I think they do allow it in a 9.8. I mean, I have had many copies come back with that there allowed in a 9.8, but I would press every single one to try to make it less pronounced. And then if we look on the back, we notice that also right up there at the top is a little bit of a bend. So that would keep it from a 9.8. I think as is, this is either a 9.6 or 9.4. So I'd put that in the pile to be pressed. Here we look at the overall waviness, looks really good. So here looking at the same spot, you can see where it would be, but it's way less pronounced. So that's good. And we look at the back. I'm just looking for any kind of bends or ticks. So this one actually looks pretty good. And then I look along the spine, make sure there's no big dings there. I do notice that at the top and the bottom there are bindery tears that are about that big, and that's okay. That is allowable in a 9.8. So I give this one a press, more of just a safety press. All right, now we look at this one. We can tell there's like a lot of the same defects when it's the same book. So this one also less of a problem with that manufacturing defect, but it does have kind of some color rub on that girl's face right there. You see the little black line? That could be a problem. That could keep it from a 9.8, but I would still submit that just as a pre-screen. And then we look at the back, and it's just perfect. Really nice copy. So I would just give this one a safety press as well. All right, then we look at this one. So just that tiny little area there, but I know it's going to be an area of focus when they grade it because it's so pronounced throughout the entire print run. So again, on this one, little bindery tears at the top and the bottom. This one is a little bit more pronounced, but this is okay. That is allowable in a 9.8. It's not as bad as it looks. That's a close-up shot. When you look at it from far away, it's just a tiny little one. So this one is also looking really good, and I would just give a safety press. All right, now we have this book here, and so you can tell different thickness of the book, different type of cover material, so a whole different set of problems. But this one's looking really good. There's a little divot right here by the staple, but this particular example, that one would still get a 9.8, so nothing of note there. And then when we look on the back cover, there's no spine roll or anything. It's just a really clean copy. Maybe a tiny little bend right there at the top from like a finger grabbing it. So this one potentially could be a 9.8 as is, but I would give it a safety press just because of that little bend up at the top. All right, here's another one, another really clean example. And this one here has a little ding right there. So definitely needs a press. Would be a 9.6 probably with a ding of that size. But it doesn't look to break color, at least not too bad. So a press should clean that up enough to where it passes for a 9.8. And the back looks really clean. Also just a little problem area down there in the corner. So I would give this a press and pre-screen for a 9.8. Alright, so this one, again, this kind of situation there, that is acceptable. If it went all the way down, I would be more concerned. This kind of, just the way this cover looks, that's a 9.8. However, this top corner here, you can see just a tiny little bend in the corner. So I would definitely give it a safety press. And let's look at the back. Back is looking really good. Also up here, just a tiny little bend right there. It could be okay as is, but I would definitely give it a safety press and pre-screen for 9/8. Alright, so taking a look at this one, very clean, no spine roll, corners are sharp. I don't see any finger bends of note. The spine looks great. No bindery tears at the top and the bottom, which is really rare. And on the back side, also no spine roll, and super flat, no bends whatsoever. So this is one of the rare examples of a book that is a 9.8 as is. And when I look at it, really nothing to fault it. So I am still going to press it because I think there's no bindery tears at the top or the bottom, and that's really rare. And so if I press it and make it lie completely flat, this thing might have a shot at a 9.9. Now, if it was a 9.8 as is, and it had the tiny acceptable bindery tears at the top and the bottom, then I wouldn't even bother pressing it. I would just say, hey, it's a 9.8. I'm going to submit it pre-screen 9.8 because there's no potential benefit of a press. If it has those bindery tears at the top and the bottom, it's definitely not a 9.9. So, but in this case, it doesn't have those, so I'm going to go ahead and press it anyways, make it lie completely flat, and cross my fingers for a 9.9. Alright, so here's another example. Here's one that does have some pretty severe spine roll, and that would definitely keep it from a 9.8, and it comes out easily with a press. So being that that is the only flaw on this book so far anyways, let's take a look at the back. The back looks really good. That'll get cleaned up by a press. So this just needs a quick press and then pre-screen 9.8. Alright, so let's look at this one here. This one, the cover lies really flat. Take a look at the back. The back lies really flat as well. No bends, a little tiny bend right there at the top corner. Probably fine for a 9.8, but I would safety press it anyways. But if you couple that with right here, you see a little ding. That ding right there on the spine where my pinky finger is from rubbing on the cardboard box that it's shipped in from the distributor. So they're sometimes more lenient on stuff like that, and will allow a little bit of spine rub in a 9.8. This one's borderline, it might get rejected. I would pre-screen it as a 9.8, and it might still get rejected. Now, if that were a spine tick, like a color breaking crease, they tend to be more strict on that. That's just what I've found over the years. But I would probably still submit this as a 9.8 pre-screen. Alright, so here's another one. It looks really good on the front. No dings or anything. And then on the back, right away you see that there was a little bit of a fold. You can see it breaks the color. So even if you press this and get that completely out, you steam it, do all of that stuff, it's still going to have a faint line right there. And you might get lucky. They might not see it, especially because of the color of this background. It might blend in really good. But personally, I wouldn't even press and submit this. I wouldn't even bother. I would just not submit this or press it because it just wouldn't be worth the time for me. Alright, so now on this one, you can see it looks really nice, but right here, a color breaking spine tick. For me personally, I just wouldn't submit it. You could submit that as you know, press and clean this, but if you look, this one also has a tiny bend right there. That can come out with a press, this one, but this one, since you can see some white, you know that it breaks color, and it likely won't come out. And then on the back, you see that ding as well. So For me, for this book, I just wouldn't submit this one. Now, if this was an Ultimate Fallout 4, I would press it and clean it, submit it just as is, because a 9.6 would be okay in that case. But for this book, we definitely want a 9.8, so I just wouldn't submit that one. Now, granted, both of the last two examples of these, they're probably 9.6s. So they're still near mint plus 9.6. Fantastic books, super high grade, just not a 9.8. So here's the main takeaway from that. One, almost everything needs a press. And two, because the line is so thin between a 9.6 and a 9.8, no pun intended, I always use pre-screen for modern tier submissions. And the reason I do this is I would prefer to have a book back raw, rejected, than slabbed in a 9.6, because then I could take a closer look at the book, see if I missed something that can be fixed, and resubmit it again. It's a lot harder to crack a book out of a case, and there's the additional fee of having it graded just so you can crack it out. And number three, almost all non-color breaking defects are pressable. I have two other videos that dive deeper into this. One is called Allowable Defects in a CGC 9.8, and the other is What Are Pressable Defects, that details what can and what can't be pressed out and what doesn't need to be pressed out. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please consider subscribing, liking, and leaving a comment. It helps support the channel and gets you entered to win this awesome set of books: Amazing Spider-Man #1, first cameo appearance of Silk; Wind #1, James Tynion Goodness from Boom Studios; Something is Killing the Children #1, 8th print, first appearance of Erica Slaughter; and Sleigh Bells #1, the one-shot from Bad Idea Comics. Thank you so much, guys, for sticking with me all the way to the end of the video, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
Bry's Comics.